Welcome to another edition of Ron's Reloading Channel. Today in this video I'm going to show you how to load up 12 gauge hulls using the Mech 600 Junior Mark V press, and we will be loading up 7.5 lead shot using Clay Buster CB1118-12 wads along with Winchester AA Super Handicap powder. Stay tuned. Here we have the Winchester AA hulls that we will be using to load up the 7.5 lead shot. So before we start to load up our lead shot, let's talk about the Mech 600 Junior charge bar. On the side that you have numbers, so the 302 represents a single stage press, and the 118 represents the 1 1/8 ounce load. So if I was doing a 1 ounce shot load, then this number would read 302, and then the bottom number would be 100. Another thing that we have is our mech bushing, and this is what measures the powder. So with the Winchester AA Super Handicap powder, I know I'm going to be real close to 20.9 grain of powder using the Mech number 21 bushing. So now we're ready to insert our charge bar. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the Mech number 21 bushing into the charge bar, feed it into the press, and then I will take this screw and I will just tighten it down. Be sure not to over tighten it, but we just want it snug. And once I have it installed, I will take the handle down and just make sure that the charge bar slides back and forth pretty easily. So now we're ready to set up our bottles. On the right, this is where you would put your powder at, and then the bottle on the left will be your shot. So one of the very important things is always to make sure that you have these caps inserted in the bottles, or else you will have a mess on your hands. So what I'm doing is when I'm putting in my lead shot, I'm supporting the bottom of the bottle. I just don't like all that weight being on that cap. And we'll just move it back up to this position. Now we will put some powder in this bottle and we will get going here in just a moment. So one of the things that I would highly recommend is this Mech funnel. It's specifically designed for the Mech bottles. So now that we have our funnel on the bottle, we're just going to pour some powder in. So what I want to talk about briefly is that you have lines on your rammer tube. So since we are loading 1 1/8 ounce loads, that I want to make sure that my rammer tube is set to line 5. If we were loading 1 ounce shot, I would move the rammer tube to line 6. If I were loading 7/8 ounce shot, I would move it to line 7. So now that we have our powder in the right bottle and our lead shot in the left bottle, we will talk about the different stations on the Mech 600 Junior. So what I will do is I will refer to the decapping pin as station 1, the primer seating as station 2, the powder charge, inserting the wad and dropping the lead shot as station 3. Our starting crimp will be station 4, and our finishing crimp will be station 5. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to look at the hull that we are reloading. And as you can see that this is a 8-fold crimp on it. So I need to make sure that we have a 8-fold starting crimp set up in station 4. So before we get going on reloading our hulls, let's talk a little bit more about how I arrived at my powder throw. So like I said, I'm using Winchester AA Super Handicap powder. And what I will do is I will take the handle, move it up and down a couple of times, and then I will slide my bar over to get a powder drop. And then I will see with what it's throwing on the beam scale. Since I've been reloading this particular powder with this particular shot and this particular wad, I know that I'm using the number 21 mech bushing. It's actually coming out to approximately 20.5 grain of powder. The recipe does call for 20.9 grain, but that 4/10 of a grain is not going to make a huge difference in the velocity. So we'll insert the hull into station 1, the decapping pin. I set a primer into station 2, bring the rammer tube down and decap the hull. Then we'll go into station 2 to seat the primer. Station 3, bring the rammer tube down. We'll drop the powder, lift the rammer tube back up, insert our wad, push the wad down, slide the charge bar to the right to drop our 7.5 lead shot. Station 4, we'll start the starting crimp process, and then I will seat it in here, and I will show you the finishing crimp on the Gate B&2 crimper in a moment. Now that we have our 12 gauge hulls with the starting crimp, What I have set up in my drill press is the gate BN2 crimper, and I will use my 12 gauge hull vise to secure the hulls. What I will do is I will put oil on top of the hull, insert it into the hull vise, and I'll bring the drill press down with the crimper. And then once finished, I just wipe off the excess oil, and that's what your crimps should look like. So with these last two shells that we have, I'm going to show you the difference between doing a finishing crimp with just the Mech 600 Junior in Station 5 versus the BN2 crimper. So remember that we've already set this particular hole into Station 4, which is the 8-fold starting crimp station. So if I did not have the BN2 crimper, then I would move it to Station 5 on my Mech press to do the finishing crimp. So that's what the finishing crimp looks like on the Mech 600 Junior. So if you can see the difference between the shell on the left that was crimped with the gate BN2 crimper versus the shell on the right that was crimped with the Mech 600 Junior. The shell on the left, what the gate BN2 does is at the mouth of the hull, it sort of rounds the top out versus where the Mech 600 Junior, it does more of a square type finishing crimp. So the difference between the two is that with the gate BN2 crimper is that it's supposed to help load this particular shell that is going out of a pump shotgun or a semi-automatic. So that is why that the top of the hull is more rounded than the Mech 600 Junior. So with this particular shell that it was crimped with the Mech 600 press, and this shell was crimped with the gate BN2 crimper and my drill press. With this video that I put together, I certainly hope that it helps you newer reloaders out on how to set up the Mech 600 Junior press and certain things that I look for when I am loading a 12 gauge shot shell. So until then, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.